ahead, please welcome Sue.
Hello, thank you. And welcome to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Wanted to thank the university for inviting me to showcase this information. It's one of my passions, so I definitely am happy to be here. So I would like to do a quick introduction of me, what makes me eligible to even share this with you. So I have done career changes and pivots. I started out in my undergrad with a finance and accounting degree, became a CPA, and decided that I did not want to sit behind a desk and crunch numbers the rest of my life, and did a complete career pivot into HR. And so I networked through that, and I had to, maximize relationships with others to find that piece of my life. I take an overall approach to work and life with a balance. And so love that everything kind of coordinates together and overflows, things like that. So I always make sure I'm looking at that perspective as well. A little bit more about my background, a few pictures I chose to share here. I did grow up in Chicago for the majority of my time that I've been on this earth here. Moved to Denver, Colorado, and explored there for a while for 7 years, and then ended up on a southeast farm in a farm in southeast Missouri for the last 3 years. My daughter is a big part of my life, and that's her new dog. He actually turns a year today. Happy birthday, Nitro. I did grow up with a big family, so lots of people to have relationships with, and maximizing those relationships for sure. That picture is from the late 1900s, so you'll see some big hair in there, but it was one of the best ones I found of the family. And then I met and married my husband here in Southeast Missouri. He comes with that Southern accent and everything like that. I love exploring national parks, love exploring outdoors in general, and you'll see I did my undergrad at UIC and then my master's program at Booth. I'm both CPA and PHR certified from that perspective. So bring with me, that background. I love that work-life balance piece. I love the holistic approach to things. So that's what I'll be sharing with you as well. And then on our agenda for today, what I'd like to do is define networking, what it is and what it is not. I find that if we just have a shift of mind frame around it, sometimes that's very helpful. Understand the skills that we need to make it work. And then how do you utilize it? LinkedIn is a big piece of it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn because I know there's a whole nother presentation on LinkedIn for this group, but it definitely does play a part of it because it's one of the biggest networking, professional networking platforms out there. And then just go over some other ideas that we can talk about. I'm going to go ahead and start off with the first poll question, and I'd like to know what people's comfort level right now as we start this is with networking. One, it's your way of life. You love doing it. Two, if you're forced to, you'll participate in it. Or three, you avoid it like the plague. You try not to do it at all. I'll just give you a minute there to fill that out. All right. Well, it looks like people are not many people try to avoid it. And then over half of us will do it if we have to. And then there's people who really appreciate it. About a third of us appreciate it. And then I'm actually going to follow up with just another quick poll right on top of that goes right with it. And so the second poll here is how often do you network with others? Almost every day, on occasion, or rarely ever. I'm going to see if this actually goes through with that poll that we just did. If the numbers correlate there. And so we'll just give people just a minute to fill this out. Okay. Right, and we're almost right on spot like that too. And so I would encourage people to, one of the things that is helpful is to define what networking is not. And I think a lot of people in my experience think that network is begging. I would like to encourage you to reframe that. Network shouldn't be about begging somebody for a job or asking them to do something for you that you feel like is an overburden for them. I would really encourage you to redefine networking and think of it as having open, honest, authentic interactions in everything that you do. What your real goal is to do is to get people to know, like, and trust you enough that they would refer or recruit you. And everyone is open game for this. Everyone, seriously. And we'll get into a couple stories about that. So, you can network with coworkers, vendors, friends, families, consultants, where you volunteer, everywhere. As a matter of fact, neighbors, one of the stories I love to share with people is, you can be at your hairdressers, your barbers, sitting in their chair, talking about what you're doing in life and where you see yourself going. And all of a sudden they can say, oh, by the way, my neighbor, I was just at a block party this weekend. My neighbor was telling me that they need someone exactly like you, or that they have a lead for you. And so you really can't count anybody out. You would never think that a lead might come from your hairdresser or barber, but there you go, you have it. I also like to share the story that several years ago I had done my fair share of internet dating. Thankfully, like I said, I'm married now. But done my fair share of internet dating, was sitting at dinner with a man and just talking about what I do for a living. And he stopped me dead in the middle of my sentence. And he said, oh my gosh, my friend hates his job. I'm so sick of listening to him complain about it. I'm giving him your name and number. I will, he's calling you, you're helping him find another job. I'm done with him. And so he ended up giving his friend my name and number. We ended up talking. He engaged my services. I helped him to find another job. He got another job. A year later, he got laid off. So he referred me to a woman he was laid off with. She engaged my services. I worked with her. She then gave my name and number to two other women who used my services. And the original friend came around 3 years later and asked me to update his resume again. So my story does go that I am slightly embarrassed that I do not remember the man's name I had dinner with, but he led me to 4.5 clients. And so it really is that, I spent an hour of my time that day and ended up with 4.5 clients and growing because they're still referring me to other people. So you really don't know where that next lead is going to come from. So I encourage you to just keep telling your story, be out there being open, honest, and authentic. And then just some skills that are used in networking. If you will notice one thing, none of these are hard technical skills. Everything really is around the soft skills that you'll need to network. So around, the active listening. And I'm going to go ahead and just give you some definitions of these skills just to make them a little bit clearer for you. So here's the first 5. And then that positivity is really important, being able to communicate effectively, and being able to understand and relate to the feelings of others. And of course, always adaptability and the active listening, making sure that you're hearing what other people are saying. And then the next 5 are that confidence, understanding and being able to articulate what you're asking for. We'll get into a little bit more specific about being specific in your ask. Organizing, making sure that you're keeping track of appointments, calendaring them, not missing out on anything. Goes with that time management, problem solving, and initiative. And these will obviously all be available in the deck for everybody on the back end of this. And then just some keys to networking. Always smile when you're talking, especially on the phone. We lose so much of that, even on video, right? I become this little bobblehead that, you lose so many of these nonverbal cues with people. Eye contact, smiling, just that smile in your voice over the phone will really change the way that people hear you. Um, make sure that you have good reception when you're on conversations. Pay attention to the clock and be respectful of time, especially in today's environment. We just experienced a technical issue. We were running, it's heart beating right at the last minute. We're trying to figure out how to get me on this. We've both been working on it for 15 minutes. It's just that apology that, goes a long way. Don't get yourself knocked out of something by not just apologizing up front and taking that elephant off the table. And then, of course, on the back end of things, if you're running out of time, go ahead and ask them if they're okay to go over, or if it's, just be respectful of the time that you've set aside. Have an agenda too. You can always ask how you can help them and thank them for their time and support in your search for things. And then, come in with an ask. Again, I'll get into being specific about things in just a minute, but make sure that you do your research, know what you can do to determine what you can get out of the networking and relationship building and things like that. And here's a third poll. So what percentage of roles do you think are landed through networking today? And I am making a little bit of an assumption here that the majority of people on the call are looking for networking and, relationship maximization for getting their career moving in a direction, upward direction. Of course, all of these philosophies and ideas will work for any type of relationship building, anything that you're looking for otherwise. And you guys have it right on. 61%, it is 85% of roles are landed through networking today. And so that is a big jump in networking. And so we say there's a 70-20-10 rule. 70% of your time should be networking. You should be out talking to other people. You should be, I consider networking, if you're using job boards, honing those jobs that are being sent to you, saying whether you're interested in it or not, giving it a little bit more information, whether it's not a real person, but you're still networking with that system to get you down and honing you into what you're looking for. And if you are spending that true super majority of time networking and talking to other people and being specific in your ask, letting them know what you're looking for, you really will only spend about 10% of your time applying for roles or looking for what you need, because you're getting real focused roles and they're going to channel you down that right path. And so from that perspective, that balance of time can be used doing, interviewing or researching the topic, whatever you need to walk through at that point in time. For LinkedIn, you should have 500 plus connections on LinkedIn. Go ahead and utilize LinkedIn to your advantage. Every person that you're connected to, on average, can introduce you to another 250 people in their professional network. From that perspective, again, going back to that hairdresser story or my dinner story, that person may not be the person that you need to talk to, but they probably know somebody who you can speak to. And I think Kevin Bacon had it wrong, right? He always said it was 6 degrees of separation. I think LinkedIn has it right. It's about 3 degrees of separation from anybody that you need to be, associated with. And LinkedIn does change its algorithm based upon your number of connections and the quality of connections that you have. So if you're connected to a lot of people in one industry or one role, you're going to start seeing other connections that are recommended for you. So try to have those connections through where you want to have them, and that you're helping LinkedIn utilize that algorithm and utilize your information and profile population so that you're getting the connections that you'd like to see. And from that perspective, you'll have more random connections as well. The other thing is following versus connecting to people on LinkedIn. Connecting will actually allow you to see there and be associated with, be able to see the connection that you have second and third degree with people, whereas following will just allow you to see what they're posting. So just make sure that you are noticing that difference. LinkedIn has done away with the connect button that's easy to find. You actually have to click in a couple times to get to the connect button now. They're really pushing that following button. And so that's the one you'll see on people's profiles. And then you have to go to the more and click into connect if you want to connect with somebody. But there is a slight difference, and you'll be able to associate yourself with their connections if you're actually connecting versus following. And you can use it to your advantage there. And then a little bit more about LinkedIn. One of the practices that I like to use with my clients is to scroll all the way to the bottom of your connections list. Anybody that brings a smile to your face as you scroll back up through it, the connections at the bottom are the ones that you've known the longest. So anybody that you think, oh, I really enjoyed working with this person, or they bring a smile to your face, those are what I call your low hanging fruit. Those are people that you like the culture they created, you like their work ethic, the probability that they liked yours as well is great. If they moved companies, they're probably at a company where you would enjoy working. They probably, would be able to uh, recommend companies to you where you would enjoy the culture and the work. So those are the people that, and even if you haven't talked to them for years, they're like your high school buddies. You call them up and it's like a day hasn't passed, and you can just start that conversation right up. You're more than welcome to link into me if there's anybody that I can connect you with. I probably will give you a phone call and try to learn a little bit more about you. I also think you should connect with people, putting just a little bit of a note in there instead of just blindly connecting. Go ahead and tell people how you met them. That people really like that personal connection, and I think you get a lot more response if you're being a little bit more personable with people. You can use notifications to stay in touch with people and on people's radars. So that notification bell button up in the top of the LinkedIn main menu bar, you'll see that and it'll show people having birthdays, or you can congratulate them for promotions or new jobs. You'll see where people are posting subject matter expertise and links on that. You can do that to show that you have subject matter expertise, and repost, like, share, comment on people's notifications and their comments there. You can also use the open to work banner to network with recruiters and or other people who are seeing that you're out there and looking for that type of stuff. The other thing I wanted to mention here is that years ago, there was a statistic that stated that you needed 7 touch points to sell something. And so when you're selling, and technically you're selling yourself as you're networking, right? You're either selling a service, or you want to get a job, or you're networking to get something that you're looking for. And so from that perspective, you have to touch point with people 7 times. So it's, a phone call, in person, an email, some way to get connected with them. Today, they're saying with all the noise out there and all the social media, that's closer to 2 dozen. That number actually is 22, they're saying today, touch points. So anywhere that you can touch somebody, either through email or voicemail, talking to somebody, meeting with somebody. I don't think, it maybe that 22 is on average, so it may not always take that, but, definitely taking a look at that. And like I said, if you want to connect to me, please do so. I will make sure that I touch base with you at some point. I do like to make sure that my LinkedIn connections are associated with somebody who I can actually connect other people with, because that's very important what I'm doing. To stay connected, once you start connecting with people and you stay connected, if you are in the job search market, I recommend emailing your connections. People, it's not that people don't care about you, it's just that they don't know what to do for you unless you're specifically asking them. And so, from that perspective, you can go ahead and tell people, if you're looking for a job. I know there may be people on this that are, networking and creating relationships for a little bit different reasons too. And I have a couple of slides at the end of this touching base on that. But definitely from the connections of getting a job, that job cycle is really every 2 to 3 weeks. So if you're thinking about, companies posting roles and then accepting applications and then starting to interview, if you're not on somebody's radar in that 2 to 3 week time frame, you're going to miss out on those. I worked with a gentleman, and he said, oh, I just talked to that person. I'll talk to them next quarter. And I said, that's 12 weeks from now. Do you know how many job opportunities you might not have put in front of you if you're not really staying on people's radars? And it's just the unfortunate thing is life gets in people's ways, so you're not top of mind unless you're asking to be top of mind, or not on people's radars unless you're staying on people's radars. So really, I do think that sweet spot is every 2 to 3 weeks. You can send an email that's just a quick and dirty, BCC to everybody, updates on here are the companies that I'm, currently interviewing with, and here are the roles. Here are companies I'm targeting and industries I'm targeting, and then here are target titles and roles that I am going for, and just list those out. Thank them for being open to connecting you with whoever they think might be an appropriate connection, or referring you. And then the biggest question I get here is, what if somebody doesn't want me to send this to them anymore? Number one, you've asked for their permission as you're connecting with them. Like, you want to ask them if they're okay with receiving this type of information. Two, you hope it's not long term, right? If you're in the job market, you're hoping that it's weeks or months before you find that next opportunity versus years. So it's really short term. And three, you can always put a little caveat in there that says, while I appreciate your being open to connecting with me, connecting me to other people, if there's ever a time you don't want to be on, if you want me to take you off this list, more than happy to do so. Just let me know. So you can always put it down that way. And then here we go with the hidden job market. So they say that 70% of roles on LinkedIn are already taken. But I say 30% of millions of roles are still pretty good. It's still a pretty good number. I've applied for and have interviewed for and received jobs that I found on LinkedIn. If you are applying for roles through LinkedIn or through any job source, go ahead and find and contact. Try to get a referral to within there as well, but go ahead and contact the recruiter or the hiring manager if you can. You can go ahead and just reach out to them, let them know that you just applied to a role, you feel like you're a really good fit, and you'd love to have a conversation with them about it. From that perspective, people, recruiting managers and hiring managers, they they say they don't know about you until they know about you. So with AI these days, all the systems are running through, and you're just a number to them until you're a name. And so by being able to go in and actually flag your application, they'll be able to, by knowing your name, they'll be able to do that. I tell people all the time, if you have somebody might pull the top 25 candidates, you may have been number 26. The hiring manager or the recruiter wouldn't know that unless they actually hear from you. And then you can always find people. Go to the company page on LinkedIn and look in their people's tab. And then on that people tab, you can somewhat discern who is available as the recruiter, the hiring manager, things like that. Some of the jobs posted even have that information right on them. If you want to network within your organization and manage relationships there, I did a presentation back in October of 2022 for the university, and from that perspective, it was called Influencing Up. And so influence up within your organization, have that connection and that exposure to the person above your manager. A good manager will allow you to do this. A not so good manager will make it difficult for you. So you have to figure out how to do it without stepping on toes. But that's something you definitely should be doing. From that perspective, there's no limit to how far up you can manage in an organization when you influence and manage up. Go ahead and go as high as you can. You'd hate for, that person to disappear one day for any reason, through attrition or through a layoff. But you want to be able to say you already have that connection and influence with the person above that. Find a mentor or advisor. Those are great people within organizations to help you create those connections that you're looking for. Knowledge share with your peers, illustrate your subject matter expertise, and then raise your hand for projects and tasks to increase skills and knowledge from that perspective. From working with people, you'll be able to meet more people that way. And I think the most important thing that you can walk away from here with is you really do have to be your own advocate. People don't know what you're looking for unless you tell them what you're looking for. Being specific in what you're asking. And that's really this next piece, right? Be specific in your ask. Even when you're asking for a calendar event, saying, can you meet next Wednesday versus saying, can you meet in the next couple of weeks makes a big difference. If you ask for next Wednesday, a lot of people will go straight to their calendar, see if they're available on Wednesday. And if they're not, they'll come back to you with an alternative or they'll say, sure. If you ask for, can you meet over the next couple of weeks? They'll be like, oh, I'll check my calendar later and may or may not remember after the day's worth of 20 more emails come in to get back to you. It's so easy to have emails buried today. So it really is using any tip and trick you can to get on people's radars. Ask for advice and opinion. People love to give their advice. They love to give their opinion. For example, even when you're doing salary research for a job or things like that, people may not give you their salary, but if you ask them their opinion of a fair salary, it's a very different answer. So even things like that, and then thank them for that information. Um, Leads or advocacy groups. I love this because one, I actually created one at the University of Chicago back when I was looking for a role in 2008, 2009. We called it a leads group. It was a bunch of people that were looking for jobs. I think a lot of people think, oh, I could never ask somebody else looking for a job to help me find a job because they're in my same boat. They're looking for a job. But if you're doing this well and you get people to know what you're looking for, a good company who's recruiting well will ask for other people. If once you become one of their final candidates, they'll ask you if you know anybody else. A lot of companies get they get budgeted in bulk for jobs. And so they're looking for multiple people. And a good candidate can go ahead and refer other candidates. And so from that perspective, you want to have people that you know. The other thing that I love about this is that group of people, you all have your finger on the pulse of the market. You know what's going on. You know who's interviewing. You know what the interview process looks like. Those types of people. So that tip is a little bit more for job seekers around the networking piece. But nonetheless, you can utilize those same skills there. Employee referral incentives, I think just reframing that you're not always a hindrance to everybody, that somebody might actually make money on you if you can get them to refer you into a company. So just that mindset shift is helpful for people. And then don't forget about alumni career services to help you network as well and build relationships. In that capacity, a lot of alumni career services are funded by helping alumni. They guarantee their funding by showing their numbers that they help the alumni. And so hearing from alumni is always a great thing to have them have happen. And then use AI, from an AI, today's AI is big too. I don't know if you haven't, I'm not sure if they recorded them, but the Booth Women's Network just did a big series on the use of AI throughout profession. And then big takeaways for you today. What I want to make sure you walk away from is take action, practice and talk to people. You're out there doing this every day. Just make some sort of a commitment to ask somebody for something and be specific in your ask this time. Try to network with people, learn a little bit more about it. Um, every interaction is an opportunity to network. So as you're out there and doing this, then you just remember that everybody you're talking to is someone who can help you, who may not be the person you need, but they're probably going to know somebody that you can utilize. And then the best relationships are mutually beneficial. And you hate to say it, but sometimes if somebody owes you a favor because you've already done something for them, it's a lot easier for them to ask to reciprocate. And lastly, make sure you thank everybody after interactions. Everybody likes to feel appreciated. Everybody likes to think that their information was valuable and created some sort of success for you. And so from that perspective, you can, just tell people how much you appreciated their insight, appreciated their time. And then here's another poll question. How likely are you to network this week using some of the ideas that we've discussed today? So you feel like you are prepared to go out You may make a couple of calls if forced to do so still, but you'll still avoid it. And here we go. All right, awesome. I have no in the bottom, so that's great. So 2/3 of people are saying, a little under 2/3 of people are saying that you feel prepared. You've picked up a couple tips and tricks, which is awesome. I appreciate that. And then and the other people say you might do it. I do after this, we can go into a question answer session in just a few minutes. But before we do that, I would like to just go through. I wasn't sure how long this would take. There's some resources that will be in here. There's great networking resources. And I do like that we created this as relationships, developing relationships versus networking. Like I said in the beginning, I think that networking word gets a bad rap from that perspective. And so having it be more, but mostly when you look this up, it'll be about networking. And so, just being able to oversee that. And then there's some network effective scripts back here, that I've put on here that will be part of the program, the document that gets sent out to people. Of course, in AI these days, you can go in and wordsmith everything. And so from that perspective, going in, writing whatever you want to write from an email perspective, dropping it into an AI source and letting AI help you just massage those wordings, super effective these days. Right. So that's my presentation. Misha, do you want to see if people have questions?
So there are a number of questions in the chat.
Okay.
Um, we can start with Regina Noble. She asked, why are 70% already taken? I think it was from a previous slide.
Yes.
Are companies failing to remove field positions, meaning the percentage of new posts, say within the last 2 weeks or so is much higher?
Yeah. So the statistic is that 70% of jobs on LinkedIn have been filled through referrals, right? You've been referred into the company, you've gone through the referral process. The company now has to, fill their process and show that they've gone out and seen diversified candidates. And so what you want to do is become that person who is the referral, who gets offered the job. And now it's just the formality of going through the process of collecting other candidates, and people will say that it's a little shady, but it's more around the regulatory issues for some companies. There are a lot of companies that will also put what are called evergreen or perpetual roles up there. So they'll just collect candidates because they have a high attrition rate. And so what happens is, once somebody quits, they'll just have a bulk of candidates out there, and so you'll always see that job posted. It may be, and I think when I scrolled through, there was somebody asking about jobs being older on there. And so from that perspective, you'll see those older jobs as well. Does that answer the question?
We write on a response from Regina. Becky asks, your recommendation to email your connections every 2 to 3 weeks, that seems quite high, perhaps running the risk of being a nuisance. Is this only in the case of when someone has offered to actively help with your search?
Yes, and that's exactly what you want to ask people if they're open to helping you. So, what I recommend is as you're networking with people, knowing that, and I'm going to assume this is for a job search with that question, knowing that, your goal is to get placed as soon as possible. And if you are not in that process of seeing posts come out, being in the application process, because if you think about it, companies do really apply, that while it doesn't appear this way all the time, companies really will just take a couple, 3 weeks to collect applications and get before they start that process of interviewing. And when you want to be in that process time.
Dylan asks, when looking for new roles other than speaking with the hiring manager, which level of the ladder is best to connect and contact with?
So honestly, everyone is open game, right? I said this a couple times. You don't know who's going to have the right connection in there. So it really is just feeling out who has the and and you have to remember, right? You want to make sure you're recruiting or you're networking with and getting referred by people who have a good reputation as well. Nothing worse than getting a referral from somebody who nobody really puts weight on that referral. So from that perspective, you want to make sure that that you're connecting with people that will give you the right pathway into what you're looking for. And so the level of the ladder is various, really. It definitely depends on what you're looking for. And again, everybody's fair game. It's just making sure that you find out who who you want to be speaking to. I do recommend, like, as you apply to places and as you have these conversations, even if you're not that final person for the role, or if you self-select out of a role, but you love the company, go ahead and stay in contact with the recruiter or the hiring manager that you've had the conversation with already. From that perspective, you now have a warm referral into another role that you might be a good fit for within that company. And no longer has to be just that cold application. You can come back and say, how about this role? I saw this one posted.
Someone else asked, what is a good rule of thumb for assessing whether a job has been posted too long? I often don't apply to jobs posted for longer than 2 weeks, but wondering if I'm limiting myself. Also, if jobs are reposted on LinkedIn, are those still worth applying for?
No rule of thumb, unfortunately. We think companies have this all together and they're doing a great job of recruiting. Companies are notoriously horrible at recruiting. If you've been in the job market, that for decades, this has been the way it's gone. It's just there's some companies that do it really, really well. They'll get back to every applicant that applies. They're really good about keeping you informed of the process. Other companies just don't do it very well. So I think I don't want to say lower your expectations, but have realistic expectations. I was working with a woman last summer. She ended up with 2 offers in August of last year. And she said, you know what the funniest thing is, Sue, is I got this call from the company. I'd been working with them in June and they asked me if I wanted to restart the process with them. And she said, I told them no, I have these 2 final offers. I don't need to go back to them. So that's just a for instance. I was working with another gentleman. He applied to the same company 8 times, heard 7 rejections, and they got back to him on the last one with, we think you're a fit for this role. 3 of the jobs were the exact same job that they had reposted. The one he finally got the call back on, he had actually applied for that role 2 times before being rejected, but now this time was seen as a fit and was going to be interviewed. So there really is no hard, fast rule. And the other thing I do think is worth mentioning is when you're looking at, and I don't know if this will be covered or if it was covered in the LinkedIn piece, when you're looking at the jobs that are posted on LinkedIn, it usually tells you the number of applicants. That number is super overinflated. Here's a couple things that go into that number. Every time somebody goes in to apply, they get counted, whether or not that they've actually finished the application. The second thing is you can apply to jobs globally now. So people who aren't even in the purview of the companies usually will hire people where they have payroll administration. That's one of their biggest restrictions. So if you're in a country or in a state where they can't administer payroll to you, you instantly get knocked out. I've heard the statistic that almost 50% of applications that way get knocked out on LinkedIn. The third thing is there's services now that will apply automatically for people. So companies are getting wise to this. They're realizing that people who apply within the first 10 to 20 minutes of a job posting probably didn't read the job posting, probably didn't tailor their resume to it, and probably aren't as qualified as they think they are, or the company posting for them thinks they are. So they're knocking all those people out. So you start to take the list down based upon that. And then you want to do things on your LinkedIn profile, like follow the company. Are you already interested in us or are you just applying to us? So follow the companies that you're applying to. use the keywords and skills that they have listed in the job application. Use the open to work banner. That if you use it just as a minimum for recruiters, the algorithm won't allow it to let your current employer see that you are open to work, but everybody else will see it. So being open to work shows you're available for, going through the process of interviewing, and you're available for placement. So they're not just calling somebody who might or might not take the role. And then start to use those keywords in your profile that are on the job descriptions that you're applying to as well. There was another question right before that, Kashima, that asked about the women's group. It's the Chicago Booth Women's Network. It does still exist, and they just did a big series on AI.
Thank you for that. Besher asks, are there tangible differences in how to network in various sectors, for instance, private, nonprofit, government, academia, etc.?
I think the tangible differences would probably just be your approach to finding people. At the end of the day, right? It might not be the person that you're interviewing with. So to pinpoint somebody, I know people in fire and safety. As an HR person, living in Denver and Chicago, and, I could connect somebody to somebody who wanted to go into fire and safety. I could connect somebody who wanted to go into now nonprofit, government, academia. I have connections with all those people. So it really is figuring out who people are connected to, and then, working your way into each piece of it from there. Again, everyone is fair game in your day-to-day interactions. You could be out for dinner, having dinner with somebody, and the person at the table next to you could be eavesdropping and hear your conversation. I mean, I've heard those stories as well, where people have gotten leads because they've just been having conversations.
The next question that we have in the Q&A box, would you recommend LinkedIn Premium? The platform now limits the number of personalized connection requests and other functions for users without premium, and I wonder whether the additional functions are worth the cost.
So right now, what people are saying, both people who have LinkedIn Premium and recruiters used to use people's LinkedIn Premium. Like, you could reach out to recruiters, right? Recruiters are being inundated with calls right now because the candidate pool is just so large with the layoffs that are going on in this economy, that a lot of people are saying the premium function isn't as worth it right now because recruiters aren't reaching out to people. People are reaching out to the recruiters right now. And so from that perspective, unless you're going to actually utilize the data that's provided for you, people are saying it's probably not worth the cost. Could that change in 3 to 6 months? Absolutely. But right now, from what I'm hearing, people aren't recommending that extra added cost unless you have the time to actually sit down and analyze the algorithms, who's looked at your profile, how do you compare to the other candidates? It just doesn't have the power that it had even a year ago. But again, subject to change as the market changes.
Want to hop into the Q&A box. For LinkedIn, I don't like to connect with people who send me requests with no message or obvious reason. Is rejecting these a bad idea? I'm concerned about bots, especially.
Yeah, no, that's an absolutely legitimate concern. And that's why I say throw a note in there as to how you met somebody or why you want to connect to them. Just putting some sort of a personal note makes that connection request acceptance a lot higher for you. And you'll see that, right? Like, you just did that. You didn't connect with people. And I tend to shy away from those as well. If someone just sends me, the generic, I want to connect with you on LinkedIn, I'm hesitant. I really want my connection list to be people I can connect to other people, because that's what people come to me for, is they want me to help them connect for that next role.
Thank you. And one more question from the chat. The Q&A box says, can you give advice on being good on the other side of networking? How can I be a good person for others to network with and find opportunities?
Yeah, and so you're saying being the source, being open and receptive to connecting with people, just being on LinkedIn means that you're open to networking. So actually responding to people's requests when they reach out for a meeting or, just having a few minutes of a conversation on phone calls, things like that. There's a lot of people who I've connected to other people and they'll say, I never heard back from them. And so, and then I feel like, oh, I made this connection and one person wasn't willing to do it. And but for me, it really is, once you're on a platform like that, that's really based in networking, you're open to having those conversations with people. So it's, I don't want to say it's your duty, but it is, you are expected to withhold that part of the, or uphold that part of the commitment to it. Absolutely. And I love that question. I love being thoughtful about it from that perspective.
We have one more question from Dylan. He asked, what is the best way to communicate your fit for a role when you may not have the level of relevant internship experience they are looking for?
So here's an exercise that I put clients through. Go ahead and look at all your job descriptions as you are looking at them. I want to look at time to make sure because it does take a couple minutes to explain. Look at the job description that you're going for the role, and then put a 1, a 2, or a 3 next to everything they're asking for, every requirement, every task, every skill. Ones are things that you've done in the past, you know how to do, you think you'd be a great fit for it. You can probably show that you've had impact or accomplishment around that. Twos are things that you've seen it before, but you might not have the comfort level of the one around it. And threes are things you've never done in the past. You're not bringing that to the role. You're going to need to be taught it. You want threes. Don't think that you don't need to have any threes. If you don't have any threes, you're going to be told you're overqualified for the role or there's no growth for you in that role. Not to say that you can't take a job with no threes. Just know that you're going in probably overqualified with no growth potential. And then on the ones are the ones where you want to be able to communicate your fit for that role. You want to show that you have that previous experience and that you can articulate that you've had impact or accomplishment around that. And then, the threes, you can even say if you have a lot of threes, or, you might wonder why you're looking at that role. And then if you want to tell a parallel story, so maybe they're looking for a proprietary software and you don't have that experience, you can always show how you've come up to speed on a different proprietary software with a different employer. And just run that parallel story, by saying, well, while I don't know your software, I also entered a job, a year ago and was able to come up to speed and produce effective reporting within 3 to 4 weeks or whatever your number would be. So just being able to fit to their job description would be my guidance. And don't think everything has to be professional. And this is where that work, that life balance comes in. Things you've done from a volunteer perspective, things that you're learning in school, all that is fair game when it comes to showing your knowledge and your learning base and what you can bring to the table.
I believe that is all the questions that we have for today. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. So thank you to Sue for providing this great webinar about how to maximize